Quiet, numbskulls. I'm broadcasting.
Welcome to this edition of the John Laughlin Common Sense Podcast. Great to be here with you on this podcast day, wherever you're watching this. And the cool thing about podcasts is they're nonlinear. You can watch them wherever you want to. You can watch them at the beach if you want, which we're almost getting there. We're almost getting to beach weather. You've heard me on the campaign talk a lot about energy. And you might be wondering, why do I talk so much about energy? And it's because it's foundational, right? If we're going to have a vibrant economy that we can actually create good paying jobs and move our state forward, we have to have affordable energy, not just for consumers, but for businesses alike. It's one of the chief fixed cost businesses face. And in Rhode Island, we have the highest electric rates, one of the highest electric rates in the country. So I thought I would bring on my good friend, Dave Walsh. Dave Walsh is an expert in energy, was president and CEO of Mitsubishi Electric Worldwide, to talk a little bit about why it is that Rhode Island faces the energy challenges that we do. Dave, welcome to the broadcast. Great to have you on this podcast. So we have amongst the highest electric rates in the country. Why is that?
Well, the short answer, John, is the starvation of New England, including Rhode Island, of natural gas, pipeline natural gas. The government officials in New England have been consistently opposed to the admission of new enhanced pipeline natural gas supply to the region in favor of the natural gas supply that exists, really excepting for the thin quantity of pipeline is LNG, which is 3 times more costly, coming up from Trinidad and Tobago. There is no need for that because of the massive quantities of Western New York, Pennsylvania, Eastern Ohio, West Virginia, nearby abundant Saudi Arabia quantities of natural gas available, which powers 42% of the country, actually powers 90% of New England, except that New England concurrently with that has decided to, over time, choke off the supply of additional pipeline capacity. Therefore, the cost of gas up there is about 3 times the typical Henry Hub national average gas cost due to the short supply of it in New England. As coal plants were closed, most of the nuclear plants have been closed, again, for environmental concern reasons. So you're left with, for all day long power, natural gas, not 3-hour solar power, not 7-hour wind power, but 24-hour day gas power is basically the keys to the kingdom on baseload continuous duty power. Nothing else has been invented to displace it.
One of the things that's interesting here in Rhode Island is our former governor, Governor Gina Raimondo, signed Executive Order 20-01 that basically says Rhode Island will depend solely on wind and solar for our electrical needs by, it was originally 2030, but it's now been bumped up a little bit later. And so the governor's answer is to build a utility scale battery plant in North Kingstown at 600 megawatts. My math tells me we need to survive 10 days of wind and solar outage, about 203 gigawatts. I wonder if you could talk about the folly of building potentially utility scale battery backup.
Well, 600 megawatts of battery storage, because it operates only 2 to 3 hours a day, is really equivalent to about 80 megawatts. The region's energy supply needs are way, 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 way beyond 80 megawatts. 80 megawatts is nothing in terms of, again, that's the real net energy supply, because, again, battery storage is not a power generation device, but only a storage media that has 2 to 3 hour a day usefulness before full discharge, and then the need to be recharged all over again. So even at advanced batteries of 3-hour to 4-hour storage capacity yield about one sixth of a full day's electricity supply. So when you hear numbers like 600 megawatts, you have to factor them down to some number between 50 and 100 for their effective all-around energy supply capacity. Very, very, very low and very, very, very costly. And finally sourced from China. So that's another challenge with that supply chain and vis-a-vis the cost and availability of it and the security risk imposed by it.
I think one of the interesting things is the CEO, and you and I have talked about this in the past, the CEO of Rhode Island Energy, a guy named Greg Cornett, was interviewed on another broadcast. And he basically said, he was asked the question, why is it that Clear River Power, which is located in, did we lose Dave? I think we lost Dave for a second there. Okay, we lost you there for a little bit, Dave, but we got you back.
Sorry.
Not your fault. So my question was basically, Tony Cornett not Tony Cornett, Greg Cornett, who is the CEO of Rhode Island Energy, was interviewed on another broadcast. And he was asked the question, why is it that Pasco Power and Light, which is now called Clear River Electric in past northern Rhode Island, sells their electricity for 7 cents a megawatt hour, and Rhode Island Energy is at 15 cents or higher. And he basically said it has to do with the regulatory environment and the fact that Clear River is exempted from a lot of the political mandates that have come from the General Assembly. And I wonder if you could talk about that for a little bit.
Well, in a lot of states, even the one I'm in, munis and co-ops can be free from Public Service Commission mandates. The Public Service Commission in a lot of states really only governs or regulates the largest utilities. I mean, one like Pasco may be exempt from being regulated by them, so they might be getting handling things on their own with what sound like much more cost-effective rates than the Public Service Commission is allowing your larger energy supplier to benefit from. So to that extent, he's probably true and correct. I'm guessing that's what the issue is up there, that they're really free from Public Service Commission mandates and their rates are lower.
And so if we were to free up Rhode Island Energy through legislation at the General Assembly, we could theoretically significantly lower the rates. The other thing, and I know you're very busy, so I'll make sure that you got plenty of time to go here, but I wanted to ask you a little bit about what took place in New York recently, where natural gas is being supplied to New York, and somehow the Trump administration got around Governor Hochul to allow that, and the tremendous rate benefit that New York is going to see as a result of that.
Well, I'm not that familiar with the details of it, but again, gas power east of the Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls, very helpful to New York for Western New York power supply. For the city, provides zero support, simply too far away. So the essential power supply now left in New York City is once again natural gas. You know, the Point nuclear plant was shut down there about 3 years ago. New York City had a 3,200 megawatt nuclear plant. It's gone. Therefore, the coal plants are long gone. New York City is about 92% dependent on gas-fired power. So the admission of new gas supply into the city is a huge benefit to it for the continuance of that kind of power, which matters. Again, there is no solar or offshore wind that's going to supply more than 4 to 7 hours a day of electrification to New York City, which needs electricity all of the time, 24 hours a day. Gas is the near-term solution to that for the next 20 years.
Now, the governor also likes to say that wind power is going to be significantly cheaper to produce because of his power purchase agreement. I believe it's like 9.08 per kilowatt hour, exclusive of transmission. Why is it that wind is so expensive?
Well, wind as a generation resource is about 2 to 3 times more expensive than natural gas to produce because you've got the part time of the day thing. When you take the massive capital cost of the offshore towers with the blades, the long distance transmission lines to bring that power back to shore, which generally are 18 to 25, 30 miles in length, you've got a massively expensive capital cost that has to be amortized inside rates. And to your point, 9.5 cents or so generation cost at the source. Typically, generation cost is about 30% of a total electricity bill. So when you add the distribution cost, the transmission cost, all the overhead and profit of the utility, you're at 28 to 30 cents based on a 9.5 cent generation cost. If generation is 3 cents or 4 cents, as it can be with natural gas and nuclear power, when it's older and fully amortized, you've got the possibility for 12, 13 cent electricity rates. But with a base cost of 9.5 cents on generation, you don't have that on offshore wind. It's very, very expensive. The capital cost of it is massively expensive. And that capital cost gets amortized inside of rates.
And then just before I let you go, your thoughts on small modular nuclear as a long-range solution, assuming we can bridge with natural gas.
Well, there's a lot of work being done on that across industry. Fortunately, a lot more players than just Siemens, than just Mitsubishi, GE, and Framatome working on that. That's a good thing. But as far as regulatory support and the NRC approval for that kind of power to be applied widely, and it being effectively done, we're looking at probably 11 to 15 years before there's wide enough scale application of any SMRs. And again, SMR means small modular reactor.
Right.
We're talking 50 to 300 megawatts in size. We frankly need much larger scale energy devices than those at this point, with the 250,000 megawatt shortage we have nationally brewing by 2030. So the solution set provided there is not significant enough and too far out to make a big difference. Is it a good thing? Yes, it is. It should be developed. It's going to be costly. Nuclear power is not inexpensive. It has been done offshore before, but this technology needs time to be permitted and gestate and have a supply chain built to create the abundance of it, which I'm going to suggest, and a lot of experts share this, as a 10 to 15 year out thing. So the question becomes, what do we do in the meantime? And I'm telling you, building more solar farms and wind farms is not the answer to low cost electrification for our people.
Dave Walsh, I want to thank you for being with us. I've missed you since I've had the John Laughlin Show. It's good to catch up, and we wish you well going forward.
John, good luck in your endeavors. We're 100% behind you.
Thank you very much. So basically, that's part of the problem with the energy, right? And so if we're able to, we have short-term solutions, mid-range solutions, and long-range solutions. Our short-term solution, obviously, is to remove the charges on your electric bill that have nothing to do with the production and transmission of electricity. That saves about 20%. The second thing we need to do, and we can do this legislatively if we have the will politically to do it, and if you get behind it, is to allow Rhode Island Energy the same regulatory environment that we allow Clear River up in Pasco. In other words, they can produce the cheapest power available from whatever source it's created. They're not constrained to buy X amount of green resources. If green power turns out to be the cheapest thing since sliced bread, they'll be buying green power. But let them buy the cheapest. That's another 15%. So we basically take a $300 electric bill and we get it down to a cost of roughly $190. And that's a beginning. That's how we can start to grow our economy. But as you heard Dave Walsh say, natural gas is going to be with us for the foreseeable future, and to fight it is folly. I want to thank you for tuning in to this week's John Laughlin podcast. It's always a pleasure to see you. And reminder, this is paid for by the Friends of John Laughlin. And also, you can very easily comment or engage the podcast. And the email address is John Laughlin, C as in Charlie, S as in Sierra, podcast @gmail.com. Thanks for being with us.